This is a modified Suzuki Jimny from a company called Twisted. They've basically created a little AMG G63, but it comes with a price to match. All in, this vehicle is £60,000. Now in this video I'm going to talk you through all the upgrades, and I'm also going to compare it to my standard Suzuki Jimny to find out if they're worth it and whether I should modify my Jimny to be like this one. Buy, sell,
car. Wow.
One of the biggest changes to this Jimny is under the bonnet, and this is it. As you can see, they've fitted a turbocharger. So what this does is increase the power of the 1.5 litre petrol engine. Normally it delivers 101 horsepower. Now though, you've got 165 horsepower. Also torques up from 130 newton meters to around 200 newton meters. You've still got the same 5-speed manual gearbox, and they haven't changed the final drive ratio, so you're probably not going to get much more top speed, but it should improve the acceleration quite a bit. And we're going to find out by how much a little later on in this video when I launch this car and compare it to my bog standard Jimny. Twisted have made some visual changes to this Jimny. You've probably noticed the decals. They've also painted the front grille in body colour. You can also see it's got chunky BF Goodrich all-terrain tyres and 16-inch alloy wheels. It also looks meaner, not just because of those chunky tyres, it's because it's had a lift. It's raised by up to 2 inches. And that brings you on to some other chassis changes. You see, if you look up there are some new springs from Ibach. You've also got Bilstein dampers and an anti-roll bar at the rear. The standard Jimny doesn't have one of those. Here on the inside there is a major change, and it's the fact that they have trimmed the cabin with lots of lovely fine feeling leather. Look on the dash up here, it really does just lift the entire cabin, especially in this two-tone effect, and it makes this car feel like a genuine little G-Wagon. There's even Alcantara headlining. It's lovely. It's not perfect though. You see some of the stitching is a little bit wonky, and over here on the doors as well. You can tell it's been done by hand. Something I'm a bit curious about are these dimples here. You see on the standard Jimny there's some nuts there with big recesses, and ideally Twisted should have filled those in so you've got a nice smooth surface. It just looks a bit odd. Another thing I'm not so sure about, this big leather bag covering the gear gaiter that you get as standard. You can feel the standard gear gaiter underneath it. And then one final thing, the fact that this is the van version, so you have no back seats. It'd be much better if you had my Jimny and then converted it, because then you would have back seats. Also with my Jimny, because it's the SZ5 with the top of the range trim, you get the standard top of the range Suzuki infotainment system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. What Twisted have had to do is fit an aftermarket system, because normally this van-based Jimny has just a terrible little radio. It's not very good. And this system doesn't have Apple CarPlay nor Android Auto. So considering you're paying all that money and you're getting a stereo like that, it's not ideal. Though I'm sure for a little bit extra you can upgrade the infotainment system to one that you'd much rather have. But I've got to say, overall, sat in it, it really does bring about a huge change to what the Jimny feels like to sit in. Before I drive the Twisted Jimny, I'm just going to drive my own to set the benchmark. This car is completely standard, well apart from a bunch of accessories which are official Suzuki accessories that were fitted to the car when I bought it, but they don't affect how it drives, so here we go. Not going to lie, the Jimny is rather on the road, but in some ways that is part of its charm. The way it's like really slow. That's like me flooring it in third. It's also noisy. The suspension is quite, well, lollopy and then also fidgety over bumps because you've got rigid axles on the front and the rear. The steering is, look at that. The car's not turning, it's more just rocking from side to side. Oh, I've got the stability control a little bit angry, and you don't really want to go around corners particularly quickly. It's the kind of car that you just move from A to B in, but it has an ability to move from A to B pretty much over any terrain, and that's the beauty of it. I like it for all its flaws, I really do. And it sort of gives me this sense of driving something slightly antiquated, something old-fashioned, like what driving was like back in the day. Back in the day before you had things like a decent infotainment system and LED headlights, which this does have. And those are things that you do really miss when you drive older cars. You like the involvement of them, but you lack those niceties that you need for modern life. I really love this car. I don't think I'll ever sell it, The question is though, would I modify it or swap it for something like the Twisted? A standard Suzuki Jimny is supposed to do 0 to 60 in 13.6 seconds. Let's find out the reality with my specialist timing gear, so here we go. Oh, good start. Gosh, it doesn't like revving, this engine. It gets really tight at the top. Come on, what are you going to do? 12.25. That was all right. I've obviously got a good one, a fast one. I've got a fast Jimny.
Oh wait, you serious?
Right then, Twisted Jimny. Let's see what you got. So you've got a lot more performance and a lot more of the right kind of noise. So rather than just like going when you rev it and it not actually increasing in speed by any significant amount, this just has beautiful turbo-y sounds emanating from down here, and the blow-off valve as well. Listen. When you lift off. Plus, when you accelerate, the car does increase in speed by a much greater amount than the standard Jimny. You do have to have the turbo on boost, so low down in the rev range you don't get much, but once you wind the engine up and it's on boost, it's just way more punchy, and you can keep up with other traffic and, dare I say it, maybe even overtake some people. There is something else I'm noticing as well. This car corners a lot flatter than the standard Jimny. Much flatter. Plus, when I did that to the steering wheel, I did invoke the stability control then, but it doesn't loll it from side to side quite so much. It seems more responsive to the steering. There is a trade-off for the better handling, and that is that the suspension does feel firmer and less comfortable. It's just a little bit more jarring and jiggly, but there's no doubt about it that it seems to hold the road better. And you got to remember, this is on knobbly tyres, which aren't so good for driving on the road. It'd be interesting to drive it on some just normal tyres to really appreciate the suspension modifications. But is the decrease in comfort worth the increase in handling gains? It does feel quite different. In fact, the whole experience so far of me driving it is a little bit like comparing the old G63 to the old G-Wagon. I'm not talking about the current car, because that is a lot more sophisticated with its independent front suspension. This Jimny, remember, despite all the mods, you've still got a rigid axle at the front and the back, as well as that ladder frame chassis. So it feels like an old G63 in the way that it's just more planted, a bit more sporty feeling, a bit firmer riding, and has more performance than the standard car. But it's still ultimately, being a Jimny, is slightly flawed when it comes to driving on the road. And I also wonder whether the mods have actually helped this car off-road. So increased height will help with ground clearance, obviously, and those knobbly tyres will help as well. However, by fitting an anti-roll bar on the back and making the suspension firmer, that's probably not going to help you off-road. So I'm not sure whether this would actually be any better. Plus, the engine having more power with turbo boost suddenly coming in, that could actually get into more trouble than help you out. You could suddenly find yourself digging a hole rather than just being able to control the throttle really progressively like you can in the low performance standard Jimny. One area this car does seem better than the standard Jimny is it's just a little bit less noisy. The sound insulation has worked. It also just feels more flexible, so I can put my foot down and the turbo just helps increase the speed when you're just cruising in fifth gear. It just doesn't feel like the engine's straining so much. So for longer journeys, this feels like a slightly better car, though I'm still having to do the usual Jimny thing of constantly put steering input in to keep the car going straight, because it always just wants to meander and wander about, and the suspension changes haven't gotten rid of that. They maybe reduced that sensation slightly, but it's still there. This is still a Jimny underneath after all. It's really odd. I really want to keep my Jimny standard. I really do, and at first it was a no-brainer. I wasn't that keen on this, but very quickly I've warmed to the upgrades, and now I'm in a bit of a dilemma. I totally slid around that corner then. That shows you that all-terrain tyres aren't great for driving on the road, and that this car has enough power to lose traction, which the normal Jimny doesn't. And that brings me on to my final test with this car. I'm going to launch it. Before I do though, I definitely think going down this bit of road, it's slightly less comfortable than my standard Jimny. Right, let's see what the 0 to 60 time is on this twisted Jimny. It went sideways. What's it going to be? 8.86. It's all right. Do you know what? I'm going to do that again, but put it into 4-wheel drive mode. Now that does lock the wheels together, but I'm going to be driving straight, so I shouldn't wind up the transmission, and it's damp and the tyres don't have much grip on this surface, so there should be enough slip if I need it. That was a better launch. Ever so slightly quicker, but not really a big enough difference to make it worth doing in 4-wheel drive. So about 8.5 seconds to 60, which is quite a lot quicker than the standard car. It's not amazing, but it's not slow. I'm quite enjoying driving this little Jimny fast. It feels quite good fun because you've got this crazy basic chassis and decent-ish performance, and there's actually something to be said for just hooning it about, because it's kind of a little bit leery and loose and a bit crazy, and it's definitely way more fun to drive on the road than a standard Jimny. So now I'm really confused. Should I get the performance upgrades done to my Jimny? In fact, should I get some of the rest of it done as well? Let me know in the comments. So then, what's my final verdict on the twisted Suzuki Jimny? Should you avoid it? Should you consider it? Should you shortlist it? Or should you just go right ahead and buy it? Well, I think most people would avoid it. £60,000 for a Jimny, no matter how cool it is just too much. And I'm not sure whether I'd pay all that money to have mine upgraded. But would I rather have this than mine? Yes, I would. And so if I had the money and I wanted something really unique, I would probably go right ahead and buy this, because it's just got as much character as the normal Jimny, yet at the same time is just more pleasurable to drive on the road. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like. Let me know what you think of this car in the comments below. Click on those windows there for some more videos, and on that box there to go to CarWow for a surprise. Thanks for watching.